Russian kamikaze drones launched a massive attack on Ukraine's remaining air defense capabilities, destroying a large number of launchers in a single day. In Bakhmut, the Russian Wagner mercenaries continued to advance and captured the Bakhmut Industrial College in what appears to be a collapse of the southern district of town. Both sides have received massive packages of material support from their allies in order to assist in the inevitable increase in hostilities as summer approaches. All of this in today's Frontline Report. Hello, everyone, and welcome to New World Econ War Reports for the 28th of April 2023 Frontline Report for the Russo-Ukrainian War. Before we get started, please consider hitting both that like and subscribe button, totally free for you, but a big help for me to grow the channel. Also consider hitting the bell icon so you do not miss the next update. When we last spoke of Bakhmut, the Russian forces had been making gains in the direction of Ukraine's vital supply lines, and a pincer had formed that had cut off the Ukrainian-held Highrise district from the southern defenses of Bakhmut. Last night, we got information that the Russian advance took over the industrial college. This vastly strengthens the Russian position in the center and south, and it makes a counterattack to reconnect the Ukrainian lines very unlikely to succeed. There is also the issue of the Ukrainian high-rise position in the south. Yesterday, we got a report that one of these defensive positions was completely destroyed. Some Russian sources initially reported that the building was struck by a large Russian bomb, perhaps an FAB 1500, but later in the day, a video came out of the detonation, and in my opinion, it appears to be a controlled explosion. So likely, the Russians were getting too close to the building, and the Ukrainians retreated and destroyed the building in order to not allow the Russians to use it against them. There are rumors spreading around about the Ukrainian defense of Bakhmut. I cannot confirm these rumors, but I do think that they are relevant. Some people are saying that Ukraine managed to withdraw all of their best units from Bakhmut. This means the mechanized units, foreign volunteers, and special forces. The defense is now being manned completely by rearguard troops and territorial defense brigades. If this information is true, then I think the final Ukrainian evacuation of Bakhmut is not far off. At this point, the battle cannot be reversed. The Russian forces are already fighting their way into the last stronghold. This means that not only are the Ukrainian infantry on the back foot, but their supplies and command structure are very threatened by the proximity of the fighting. Moving the command structure outside of town will probably happen soon, if not already, but it will reduce the reaction time of the defense to future actions taken by the Russians inside of town. The biggest news of the day, however, is Russian strikes on Ukrainian air defense and missile strikes on Ukraine itself. Yesterday, we got a report from the Russians that they managed to destroy 4 Ukrainian S-300 air defense launchers. Believe me, when I first heard this news, I thought it was complete BS. Essentially, that's an entire air defense battery, and the S-300 is a long-range system, so my thought was, how could the Ukrainians have them so close to the front lines and so available for the Russians to strike? Well, this I don't have an explanation for, but later in the day, Russians released drone footage of the Lancet kamikaze drones striking the S-300 launchers, all allegedly in the Kherson, Zaporozhye, and Mykolaiv regions. Additionally, there is now footage of a Buck M1 launcher spotted in a field and hit by a Lancet, as well as the first confirmed hit on a Gepard anti-aircraft gun of German origin. Some colleagues and friends of mine speculate that maybe these systems were all close to the front in order to provide air defense cover for the Ukrainian troop movements and staging for the offensive, or perhaps some of these systems are decoys, and by decoys I mean they're real systems, but Ukraine might be so low on missiles that they now have more launchers than missiles, and it would be smart to send the empty launchers to the front because they no longer have value. This because there are no S-300 missiles available for Ukraine to purchase. If they want air defense, that's why they have to move on and get Western air defense systems. I do not think that this is the case for all of these systems seen in the video. One of the launchers clearly has a full complement of 4 missiles that detonate immediately on impact. I also highly doubt the Gepard and Buck systems were decoys, but it's also possible that these systems can be repaired. It appears the hits on them don't appear to be as catastrophic as those on the S-300 systems. Last night, after news of the destroyed air defense systems, the Russians launched another smaller missile attack into Ukraine. We are unsure what exactly the targets were, but it is likely material and manpower intended for the Ukrainian offensive. There were reports of missiles all over the Dnieper River cities of Kyiv, Kremenchuk, Dnipro, and Zaporozhye, along with a detonation in Uman and Mykolaiv. Ukraine claimed to have shot down all but 2 of the missiles, but there appear to still be a greater number of detonations than what matches the Ukrainian report. So there is a chance that Russian missile strikes can continue to pick up in the coming weeks as gaps in the Ukrainian air defense coverage continue to grow. In total, the Ukrainian report on Live UA Map claims that overnight there were 8 missile strikes, 31 airstrikes, and 56 multiple launch rocket strikes. Quickly returning to the front line, there were a number of Russian assault actions today, mostly in the same areas we see on the daily basis: Marinka, Avdiivka, and the Kremenna forests. There are some claims that the Russians have made advances deeper into Marinka without any evidence to back it up, but primarily these are just very similar assault action reports we've seen over the last couple weeks. While we are here, I will discuss aid packages that have been received by both sides. The NATO countries have announced that some 98% of the promised equipment is now in Ukraine, and this package includes 1,550 armored vehicles and 230 tanks. Obviously, a very formidable force when concentrated. I do think the number is slightly misleading, as the 1,550 armored vehicle figure includes everything from Bradley IFVs to Humvees, which are obviously 2 very different platforms. There are a large number of IFVs in the grouping, but I expect the largest percentage is actually armored cars and trucks. Um, Meanwhile, the Russians have allegedly received 300,000 artillery shells and over 1 million rounds of ammunition from Iran. The claims state that this aid arrived in Russia via ships transporting it on the Caspian Sea as recently as March. So both armies appear to be stocking up for a big throwdown this summer. This will likely be the bloodiest phase of the war. Finally, the last thing I want to speak on is the Black Sea grain deal. As many of you probably remember, the UN and Turkey brokered a deal with Russia and Ukraine last year that lifted the Russian blockade on Ukrainian ports and allowed Ukrainian grain to be sold into world markets. This deal was seen as a huge achievement because it increased the grain supply and probably prevented millions from going hungry. While that is certainly true, the Russians have criticized the deal because a large amount, but not all, of the Ukrainian agricultural products were actually delivered to the EU. Regardless of this fact, the grain simply making it to the international waters would have increased global supply and allowed third world countries to purchase other grain at a cheaper price due to lower buyers' competition. This grain deal is now under threat due to naval drone strikes on the Crimean port of Sevastopol. Last week, the Ukrainians launched another round of drones into the harbor in an attempt to damage or sink ships of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. This has happened at least 2 other times now. The Russians claim that all of these Ukrainian naval drones originated from Odessa and used waters that were intended for grain ships to navigate their way to Sevastopol. They say that this is a violation of the grain deal to use lanes cleared for civilian shipping for a military purpose, and they are not only now threatening to not renew the grain deal, but to blockade the Ukrainian ports once and for all. A move that is predictable, considering the Russians will do whatever necessary to protect their fleet, but also potentially catastrophic for international grain markets. This is all for me today. Thank you all for tuning in, and until next time.